Given that this show is so wild, I would be perfectly content if Jesus himself came down from the heavens, picked our boy out of this rust-filled lava, gave him a sacred bow and called it a day, because with all the insane shit we've experienced in this show, honestly, I don't even think something into that league of absurd is something that couldn't happen in a show like Bisco here. But honestly, I really have a hard time believing. I think last week, it really was painting Milo's death, right? It was saying, okay, he's gonna die. The trailer kind of gave me a dreamlike sequence, and it turned out what they were previewing was a dreamlike sequence, but the idea of using the cure that the sister gave to someone like Bisco ended up saving him, so that makes a lot of sense. But he's literally losing limbs. His rust is getting so bad his limbs are falling apart, and then he sinks into lava. But we also know that his blood's unique, so we don't know how resurrections or certain abilities might work in this world. There's so much insane shit that until the first season wraps up and they don't touch upon it, I'm willing to believe there is actually still a chance he could come back. I just don't know how. We just know his blood is unique. We know this is almost like a sea of rust. There might be something that could still bring him back. But if that is an end, that is one hell of an emotional ending. And I think in most stories, if this was, let's just imagine that an episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes from now, Bisco ends up living. That would have been the second death in 2 episodes of a time span in terms of last week and this week, that a main character was presented as dead and came back. In most stories, that would be an issue because they're just baiting you along and not actually committing. But I think given the circumstance and going up against Kurokawa and everything like that, it makes a lot of sense to play with emotions, and if they decide to keep both of them alive, I'm not going to be complaining, because if we get a second season someday, I want to see both of these characters survive. But if not, what an incredible way to propel Milo's character arc forward, and if not, it'll be interesting to see what that means for the future of, can a character die, yes or no? But either way, this was one hell of an episode, right up there with episode from last week there. The entire idea of the goodbye scene and, how cute it was, but knowing that it was truly a goodbye. At least that's how Bisco was presenting it. I mean, of course, you have best wingman Milo here, who's trying to hook up his bro with his sister, trying to say, she's inexperienced just like you. You guys are a bunch of numbskulls. You can get together. She's an E-cup. Go ahead, have your fill. As he's basically getting embarrassed for what probably would be the last time for him, as he's promising that, no, I did take the cure as well. I mixed it myself, as he takes his hand and places it on the one section of his cheek that's not getting so corrupted by that rust. It was just very sweet and heartbreaking to see how both Milo and Bisco are willing to die for the other. Last week with Milo knocking him out so he could go in, doesn't want to see his body get pushed to the breaking limit. And this week, seeing that, you're getting the cure, I'm going to make sure your sister has a brother that's going to live, and I'm going to go give my life to take out this scumbag. I mentioned how in last week's review, I wasn't sure if people were going to get upset that they did run away without finishing off Kurokawa, but I like the idea that not only did they have a reason for running away, they were literally on death's doorstep, there was reinforcements coming, but the idea that he wanted to take the fight back and finish him off before it's too late because he understands the threat of this man, even though he had no idea Jabi was with him at that moment. That was actually just a lucky coincidence given the fact that, ultimately Jabi probably would have ended up dead there had he not been the one who was about to cut off his fingers, but in return cut the chain instead. But just seeing in the span of 2 minutes, we go from these bumblebees, these wasps, that are looking like they're trying to square up. We have a smoking gorilla with a cigar in his mouth, who I was like, okay, this is going to be a really big point in the episode. Now the sister just completely knocks him away before we even get to see the gorilla in action. We have this Bane-looking mofo who has a giant machine gun who honestly looks like he could be in any wrestling tournament and would just make everyone quit before even attempting to go up against him. And then of course you have the standard fight that you're expecting. This show in a span of just a handful of minutes can do some of the craziest shit ever, and that's why you don't really know what a character death actually will look like when you look at what we're actually experiencing in this show. I'm really hoping that Bisco and Milo will be able to continue adventuring because they're just such a good duo. They care for each other so much, and just to see them not be able to continue on, I think would be pretty heartbreaking. And I'm not sure because if we look at last week, I saw a lot of people firmly convinced Milo was dead, so they're probably going to be relieved. But if they do the same thing, I'm wondering if there's going to be any pushback, because as it stands, sinking into what seems like a rust-filled lava, that has to kill you, right? but it's just one of those things where it's this sense of disbelief that this is such an absurd show to begin with. Giant crabs, giant animals, and, superhuman level strength. I mean, we already know Bisco is, like, kind of superhuman, so we don't know what truly is death. It's robotics, prosthetics, will that be able to compensate for a lack of legs? I don't know. So I'm very curious because as it stands, people are probably going to be pretty damn shocked, like I am, that they seemingly killed off one of the two main characters. And if they bring him back, I'm very curious to see the response because I would assume a good majority wouldn't actually be mad just because of how insane the show actually is as a roller coaster, but at the same time, I could see some pushback as well. Either way, for me, I mean, in terms of an exhilarating roller coaster, this isn't one that just kind of steadily gets up to the top and then gives you one big dip. It feels like every episode you're going up and down because this show wants you to say, this is the craziest shit I'm watching this season. And I think there's no real competition in that department. If you want something absurd, you want something that feels written with quality in terms of its world mechanics and what it's laid out so far, Bisco is definitely one of them for me. But it was a very pleasant surprise to really have that metal, that rock riff come back in swinging. I've always loved the OST, and in those very hype fight scenes, they always just start shredding on their guitars, and this episode did exactly that. The music choice and directing in this show is just 10 out of 10 in my opinion, and the type of shit I was experiencing, like, we were literally in this volcanic area, just you could see the steam, you could feel the heat even though it's a drawing. And then to see the people we're fighting, we got Bane, we got a gorilla, we got these wasps, we got the general soldiers, we got Bisco on his deathbed. And to see them just like kicking ass and taking names, getting some clarification on where the sister went and everything, it was just really, really fun in terms of being just action exhilarating, while also making me sweat up a storm being like, you can't kill him, there's just no way. After thinking last week they potentially killed off Milo. And honestly, I don't know where they want to go from here. I really, really don't. Because if they succeeded, which they seemingly did, they took out Kurokawa, but at the same time, like, where do you go now? Because even if, say, Bisco's dead, right, Milo can make a cure, right? So is there just going to be like, are they going to open up the world more and explore further past that in terms of future stories? No idea. As far as I know, we're still in the first light novel of this series as well, which is insane because it feels like we've experienced 12. And not in a bad way, I'm just saying, like, it feels like just so chock full of interesting ideas. It's hard to imagine we're just so early into a story like this, but thoughts and feelings if you have any, because goddamn, this was a roller coaster, an exciting one, a terrifying one, an emotional one, a little bit of everything if you ask me. So thoughts and feelings if you have any, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.